Kind of a chilly day out, and getting back down into this section of the woods after a little hiatus to somewhere else. So I'm going to pick up where I left off, trying to take down some of the ash that I think is not going to survive the year. That one right in front of us, and there's a couple down the hill. And while I'm out here, I'm going to take some basswood as well, because there seems to be a marketplace developing for basswood. I think that's kind of a seasonal thing. I understand that the carving community likes them, but most of the mills around here, they don't have anybody to sell to, but one in particular has now developed a customer who wants basswood, so that means I can fell it and sell it and get something reasonable out of it. You know? But this tree right here, pretty typical of what's in this area. And you really don't know which way it wants to go. You know, the trunk kind of sways to the right, but the top goes to the left. And then you have that big old branch. And my biggest issue with these is not so much getting them on the ground. I think I'll just move it off to the left. But what I don't want to have it do is fall on that branch right there, because sometimes that'll tend to break the tree. So I'm trying to get it down and at least get the saw log up to that spot, and then maybe a short one after that, you know. So then I have a couple down the hill. I'm not going to video all of them because I don't feel like carrying all the stuff up and down the hill. Kind of what happens when you get old. So but you know, the theme I've been talking about, I went back into some of my videos, been talking about this since 2018-19. It must be like a broken record. And that's the total saw concept, where it's not just about one feature, it's the collection of features of a chainsaw that tend to make it useful or not, you know. And over the years, you know, I've sort of developed a blend of characteristics, you know, that work for me, and they may not work for somebody else, but they do work for me. And this saw pretty much typifies it. Either a 24 or 28 inch bar, you know, the buck and spikes, keeping the work a little bit away. And again, I cut back the lower spike so it doesn't over leverage when you first get into a cut on a smaller tree, you know, less than 24 inch. But it still has enough bite for the big ones. It does. It's kind of a blend. And but really important to me also is, like on today, is fuel usage. That's what I'm going to focus on today, because I got to carry down in there. I don't think I can get down there with a little side by side and get back out, because underneath the snow, it's mud. It's actually pretty steep down in there. So whatever I carry down there, I have to carry back, which is also why there's not going to be a whole lot of video on this. Just going to take a saw, load it up, a couple of wedges and an axe, and walk down in there. Take out the trees, try to take 3 or 4 trees at a clip before I got to come back up and out. I might take the fuel and bar oil and set it halfway down the hill. I might do that. But this is where, you know, the fringes, usually I can drive right down in there, so big old honking saw doesn't bother me because I just throw it on the tractor, but I can't do that today. So this is the saw that gets the call. Well, I thought it'd be fun to give you guys a little cringe moment. And so the beauty about the whole form combination I have here, both with the chain and the saw, is you can try things and it doesn't matter to me, because the main saw isn't this saw at all. It's going to be the Husqvarna. But one of my good friends who makes a living cutting trees has done something for a long time, which I just like. It's cringe for me, but it works for him. So I'm in a situation where it might just work for me too. And what that is I just took these chains off the grinder, the ones I have for this saw here, and the raker, there's no way the raker is going to be low enough to cut well. So what I'm going to do is just touch the raker with a hand grinder. It was funny because he was telling me, he goes, you know, I've made an advancement in my technique. I go, what's that? He goes, instead of using the full-sized wheel, I use a cutoff wheel, which is thinner. It doesn't cut quite as hard. And, you know, they all look about the same. It doesn't freaking matter. I touched up the chain this morning on the grinder, so we'll see how this plays. Not something I would recommend, I'm just darn curious. So now let's just see if we can get them started. That would be the next phase of this operation. Both saws are pretty much ready to go. And the way I'm going to deal with those is, one is the felling saw and the other one is the one I use for the firewood side of it, and if I get stuck. So let's start out with the main saw, get it started. Get it idling and waste a little fuel. I can see that hand grinder working pretty good on the firewood chains, to be honest with you, because I can see how much is being taken off, and it's just a matter of making sure you get them all the same, right? Well, let's try this guy. Let's see if it'll start in 3 or 4 pulls like it always does. This one's sitting out overnight on the tractor outside, so I don't know if that plays a role or not. Not oiling the way I want it to oil. Let me check and see. Yeah, I don't think that bar, that could be any more plugged. Ah, boy. Tempted to grind a slot in there. And of course, that's why I carry this tool right here, or some derivative of, that I can go right in there and stick it right in a hole. Like that. Push the stuff out, and then I take a tuning screwdriver and set it right in that slot and push it out the back. That usually gets it clean. What I do on these with a long bar is I go pick up the handle. So you see how the bar rocks up into the top position there, and then that's when I do my tighten. I just go firm, back it off a little bit, and then I'll check right here. I don't want it too tight. That's about right. Then tighten up the bar nuts, and oftentimes it'll tighten the chain up just a little more. And then there's another tool that I've kept in my toolbox for decades, is one of these. And I don't need to do it on this saw, but some of them you need a little bit extra leverage. And but where this is really handy is if you're out in the field and got to tighten up an Allen or a Torx, and you've got these old type of wrenches for, you know, emergencies, adding a little bit of handle to it with a little pipe gives you a lot of extra leverage. And I actually learned that from a fella that has the same name as a singer, and he was a machinist down in Brooklyn, New York, named Tony Orlando. Still not coming out the bar. It's pouring at the bottom of the saw, but not coming off the bar. So let's go take another look. Not what I wanted to be doing when I needed to be felling. Oh, actually, the bar is soaked, so it is oiling. So I won't have to tear it apart. It's oiling now. Look at that. It's all over the place. I don't know why it's not flinging into the snow. Huh, that's strange. Yeah, it's soaked. That's what I'm looking for. It's running out the bottom again, so we do have oil. It's just not flinging off the chain. Look at that pulled up on top there. So we got plenty of oil. Let me go to work. Yeah, I think what I should call this video is the anatomy of a cut. And this tree right here, I could make it go back there, over here, or follow the top and go there, which is what I think I want to do. But either way, where the tree truly wants to go is a little bit in question. And so when you're determining what kind of cut you're going to do, it's based on the situation, you know what I'm saying? There's some styles of fill-in cuts that are good for one in set of priorities and not another. There's always a set of tools that work better for one versus another, I guess is the point. And since this one here, I have a desire to make it go somewhere, and there's a chance it might go somewhere else, that means I should go with a directional felling strategy, because that gives me the most possible control of how this tree falls. Right? So that's decision number one. Is it going to be some special type of cut, or does it matter? And since I really care about where it's going to fall, it matters. That means directional falling. If I didn't care where it goes, or conventional can make it go a certain direction, but basically a cut that has a hinge. If it didn't matter, well then there's a different set of priorities, because you don't care where it falls particularly, just that it falls safely. Then other styles of cut will work fine. In my case, what I've done on the ash trees, it's kind of a binary. I either do directional, as I've shown on video for a very, very long time, or I do something along the lines of a spur cut or a jump cut, where I don't have a hinge, but I know pretty much where it's going to go. And yeah, I give myself room to get the heck out of there and establish a place where I can go for safety, you know, clear around the bottom like I'm doing right now, so I don't trip when I'm trying to get out of there. But you know, spur cut works. I've even got to the point with my spur cuts where by, you know, where I place the spurs, you think of a triangle, where I'll put them on either side of where a hinge might be to decide where I want it to go, and then one in the back with a wedge. And oftentimes I can use that to sort of influence some, not like a hinge and directional filling, but some. And I've refused to this point in time to show any of that on video, but I don't know. I might change. Now the other thing is it a saw log or is it firewood? You know, if it's a saw log, you want as much of that as possible. That's why spur cuts work good. Jump cuts do as well if you cut them low. And then with directional felling, it takes a little extra thought in order to build the geometry of the cut so that you get the maximum out of the log. And as I've shown over and over again, what I do is I try to keep my hinge open so the tree doesn't go in the tension before I want it to, and out of the money wood if possible if I think the bud is going to be, you know, a saw log. So like in this case here, I've got some root flare I can use, and it really doesn't get into the heart of the log. I'm not sure this is a money log, but it's good for demonstration, right? And that way I'm as close to the ground as possible to get as much of the log as possible, which adds up over time. You know, you get 6 inches, 8 inches more, even 10 inches more log. It doesn't take too many logs for that begins to matter on the bottom line. Now, another point I want to make is if I was felling that direction versus that direction, you know, the type of face cut might differ. I can do a Humboldt because the back of the log is higher than over here, so I can work underneath and get even more of the log. So for me, it's funny because you always hear people who want to talk about Humboldt versus conventional. To me, that completely misses the point. The type of face cut to me is irrelevant. It's where you put the hinge and the style of cut that you use. And then the face cut that you use really depends on a bunch of other factors, but it's not centered around trying to figure out how to cut a tree with a Humboldt. That's stupid. That's just simply stupid. Or same thing, trying to figure out how to cut a tree with a conventional. That's stupid as well. You start out by figuring how much of that log do you want to keep? And that's your bottom cut. And then your face cut is determined on things like, can I use a root flare to for a hinge? Do I want to cut the root flare so I don't have to cut it when it's on the ground? Is my log up here somewhere where working over my head, it's hard, so I use a Humboldt, or down there where it's easy just to do a conventional because it's a chop down from the top type cut. It's simple to do. And I'm not going to try to get that log anyway. It's those kind of things. But the point being, it's the geometry and the type of the cut which determines which of the face cuts makes, you know, most sense. In this case here, since I'm going to be trying to cut right off the bottom, you know, it'll be some form of conventional, but I'll also try to combine the face cut with getting rid of some of the root flare so I don't have to trim it up when it's on the ground. And so that's what we're going to do. Cut down, cut in. I'll bore cut as much as I can. Sometimes what I'll do if I really don't care, see, I don't know how much of that I'm going to get, so I'm not going to get crazy, but I'll bore cut in and pop it out the side. And that makes it easy for me to stick the bar in there and make a nice flat, you know, stump, and that gets more of the log. Got to be careful though, because when you have a little flare like that, that promotes a tear up the side. So I might nip the side a little bit to mitigate that. Now the other thing I've done is, and actually it's pretty recent, is when I do the bore cut from the front, and I know I'm going to go out the side and use that for basically a spot to start with the, you know, the bore cut for the whole tree, is I'll pick it about a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch off the floor so that the back cut ends up being a little bit higher than the face cut. A little bit of high wood in the back. And that always helps, you know, with the pull situation. But I'm doing a lot of talking. Let's get cutting. So now that I've established a hinge, a little bit more than I wanted, but the way the tree is, it really wants to go somewhere else. And I have to have enough hinge to control the tree. And we'll see. We'll see if I did it. So now I've got it bore cut where it's popped out the side here. And I can stick the bar back in here. And again, it don't matter if you're using the back bar technique or front bar. Going in there allows me to bore cut the rest of the tree and then get the hinge to where I want it. And I'm going to concede that I'm going to get a little bit of pull on this tree. And I know it. So, but I need a little bit more hinge. So what I'm going to do is leave a little bit, knowing full well it's going to probably pull some. So what I'm going to do now is finish the bore cut, form the hinge so I don't have to think about it, and then cut back to the trigger, and then step back and put a couple of wedges in there, and then decide if it's time to cut the tree down, let it go or not. But you see that's not a very strong tree, which I have to be careful of. You see the ants already coming out of it. So anyway, let me finish the bore cut. Which means, by the way, on this tree, I probably didn't have to go through all this. But you never know on these. You just simply never know. So. Point, that tree is ready to go. And now the question is where? But it's hanging. So let me just nip it with the saw. Wedges did their job. Yep, and that is, in my mind, case and point why you do what I do. And if you notice, it went pretty much where I wanted it to. But also notice that it wanted to sit back. And when I didn't cut the trigger all the way through, it gave it a shot to set back. But fortunately, I had just enough hinge to where it would hold it. So that's why you do that. This is a perfect scenario. And look how flat that stump is and how close to the ground it is. And it looks to me like I have a good solid log. Yeah, it's kind of curvy. I'll get something out of it. So let me go get rid of the limbs and then get on to the next one.